Tonight we have decided to pick up the show and relocate. We've relocated to Zug, Switzerland. That's right, beautiful Zug, perfectly nestled right in the heart of the northeast corner of Switzerland. It's a beautiful place, really. Lovely alpine horns sounding in the distance. Kent Jones, as you can see, has already adopted the local dress, festooned in traditional Swiss lederhosen. He looks awesome. Why did we decide to pick up and move to Zug, Switzerland? Because that's what a lot of big international companies have decided to do, and we figure we'd follow their lead. Among the companies that have relocated here to Zug is Transocean, whose name probably sounds familiar to you because it was their deep water oil rig that exploded in the Gulf of Mexico last month and is causing the enormous oil spill that continues to gush off the coast of Louisiana. This, Zug, is where Transocean is headquartered. Zug, Switzerland. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would a deep water drilling company like Transocean be located in a landlocked nation like Switzerland? Well, on our way over here today, we decided to surf around a little bit on myswitzerland.com, and we found that among the many charms of Zug, the tourism authority notes that, quote, Zug is highly rated by business people because of the low rates of taxation. Ah, really? You're kidding. Okay. Look, thank you. Has a form of piercing the brain, the yodeling. Do you find? It's almost like, you have jewelry in your ear or like a nose stud or something. It's like having your frontal lobe have an ice pick shoved through it again and again and again. Transocean used to be an American company. Transocean was headquartered in Delaware, but now Transocean is a Swiss company, by which I mean that a couple dozen Transocean employees have moved to Switzerland, while 1,300 or so of their employees are in Houston, Texas. So you got that? Roughly 1,300 employees in Texas, roughly 13 employees in Switzerland. So naturally they want to be thought of as a Swiss company. Here's the building in Zug where Transocean rents a little bit of office space. They call it their company's headquarters. Earlier today, Transocean held its closed-door annual shareholders meeting here in Zug. Now, because they are nominally a Swiss company, because they're located here in beautiful Zug, Transocean doesn't pay a whole lot in taxes. Zug levies no taxes whatsoever on any money that Transocean earns outside the nation of Switzerland. And since, as you know, they're a deep water drilling company, they are not generating a whole lot of revenue here, again, in landlocked Switzerland. Handily, though, the corporate tax rate here in Switzerland is half of what it is in the United States altogether. Now, Transocean is sort of new to the neighborhood in Zug. Before they moved here about a year ago, they were based in another noted tax haven. They were based in the Cayman Islands, which has been called home by some other big international companies like, say, Coca-Cola and Oracle and Tyco. Now, the other major company involved in the Deepwater Horizon scandal and the actual physical drilling at the Deepwater rig was, of course, Halliburton. Halliburton still purports to be an American company, but they're not based in Texas anymore. Now Halliburton is headquartered in Dubai. Again, that's handy. This is what these companies do. This is what companies do. Even if the Supreme Court wants to call corporations citizens and say they're just equivalent to you and me, we don't have the same year-to-year options of venue shopping for the best tax liability, for the least regulations, for the least accountability. You might remember us reporting a few days ago on the fact that even though Transocean is nominally a Swiss company, yeah, whatever, their rig that exploded and sank in the Gulf was flying the flag of where? The Marshall Islands. Why was that purportedly Swiss rig flying the flag of the Marshall Islands when Transocean isn't based in the Marshall Islands, when the rig wasn't built in the Marshall Islands, when the workers on the rig didn't come from the Marshall Islands? It's a good question. It was a flag of convenience, as they say. Convenient in the sense that pretending to be a rig from the Marshall Islands meant that Deepwater Horizon could avoid pesky attention and regulations that might redound from any country they actually did have any single freaking thing to do with. The New York Times reported today that, quote, no one from the Marshall Islands ever inspected the rig. The non-governmental organizations that did were paid by the rig's operator, in this case Transocean. Also handy. Hey, me, how am I doing? I'm doing good. How about me? I'm doing good, too. Thanks, me. Let's check it again later. See me. This week, Transocean filed a petition in a Houston federal court to have its legal liability resulting from this disaster in the Gulf limited to $27 million. That works out to roughly 3 days of Transocean profit. That's what they make in profit in 3 days. As outrageous as this behavior may seem, this is not outrageous behavior for a corporation. A corporation is not a person. A corporation isn't moral or immoral. A corporation is by design a device that is created by humans. It's on paper, and its purpose is to seek profit. And so obviously it makes sense for Transocean, just like it makes sense for the Rachel Maddow Show, to relocate here to beautiful Zug, where the tax burden is low and the lederhosen are lovely. This is what companies do. Judging corporations for trying to lower their taxes or evade regulations that might hurt their bottom line, it's like scolding a hawk for eating a mouse. It's like finding a boxer for punching someone. It's like being mad at a Tampa, Florida death metal band for singing about corpses. Corporations are devices created by humans to maximize profit. This is what corporations do. This is not a bug. This is a feature. This is what they do. Don't be mad at companies for pretending they're Swiss when they're not, just to avoid taxes. Don't be mad at corporations for pretending they're from the Marshall Islands to avoid their ships being inspected by someone they're not paying. Don't be mad at corporations for trying to evade responsibility when they cause disasters. If you want them to not do those things, don't bother being mad at them. They're doing what they're designed to do. If you want them to not do those things, you have to stop them from doing those things. Or not, if you're, say, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. You might remember the first day that we were broadcasting down in the Gulf after the spill, doing the show from there. We had on Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey to talk about the fact that since the Exxon Valdez oil spill, there's been this $75 million cap on what oil companies have to pay in damages after a spill. $75 million, that's it. That was exhausted in about the first 3 seconds of this current disaster in the Gulf. We talked with Senator Menendez that night about his proposal to raise that damages cap from $75 million to $10 billion. That proposal was blocked in the Senate yesterday by Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Her explanation? She said that raising the dollar amount of damages that oil companies would be responsible for in the event of a spill would mean that only the, quote, biggest of the big oil companies could drill for America's offshore resources. Think about that argument for a second. She's saying making companies responsible for a bigger proportion of the damage they cause when things go wrong would, what, prevent more companies from potentially creating offshore oil spills? Mom and pop companies, really. Even small businesses should be able to create really large offshore oil spills that cause more than $75 million in damages. She wants to make sure that anybody can do the drilling, even if they can't necessarily pay for it if something goes horribly wrong. So if something does go horribly wrong, which does from time to time happen, Senator Murkowski wants to make sure that the oil companies will not have to pay. The taxpayers will. Listen, I understand why companies like ours move to Zug. Look how beautiful Zug is. Look at how awesome Kent looks in his lederhosen. There's nobody who is not flattered by lederhosen. Look at him. Hunk of Kent. But why it's a better idea for the taxpayers to pay to clean up oil spills rather than the companies that cause those oil spills? That is a harder question. That is a harder question to get your Swiss miss around. Joining us now is Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of the great state of Vermont. Senator Sanders, thank you for your time tonight, sir, and for enduring the tiny little bit of yodeling that slipped through the censors.
Not at all. That was great.
I know that you, sir, are a co-sponsor of Senator Menendez's bill to raise the legal liability for these drilling companies. Are you surprised that it's being blocked right now? Do you have hope that it can get around this block?
Rachel, I'm in the United States Senate. Nothing surprises me. These guys talk about, you hear often, personal responsibility. They remind us about the huge deficit national debt that we have. But when it comes to protect corporate interests, I mean, that's in fact what they do. No personal responsibility. Let the taxpayers pick up the burden. I would say, Rachel, in the midst of all of this, if there is any silver lining to this absolute horrendous environmental disaster, I hope it is that the American people in Congress understand not only that we've got to terminate offshore oil drilling, but that we have to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. At the end of the day, if you do all the offshore drilling you want, in the year 2030, do you know what the savings will be on a gallon of gas? It'll be 3 cents. 3 cents. Do you think the risk is worth saving maybe 1% of what you pay for a gallon of gas? I think that is pretty crazy. Furthermore, if we move to strong CAFE standards, as we are, in the year 2016, if we go to an average of 35 miles per gallon, you know what we will save the average consumer? $1 a gallon. $1 a gallon. So I think the evidence is overwhelming that we've got to suspend any new offshore drilling, that we really have to, in a very, very bold way, move to energy efficiency, wind, solar, geothermal, biomass. We have the capability of doing it now. This is no longer a